Hi, it's Joanne Dennison, and welcome to another segment, episode, show, podcast of Sit in the Attendee's Chair. Glad you chose to join us. And with me in the studio is...
Steve the Great!
Apparently Tony the Tiger, too, if any of you are old enough to know who that is. And joining us remotely in the studio from Tallahassee, Florida today is...
Hi, it's Kelly.
So she's if you've listened to any of the recent ones around this, which of course you may not even be listening to them in order, she's been coming to us virtually from Boston, but she's home to see her family for the holidays, but chose to jump on with us anyway. So always glad to have you. Today is one without other guest, and it's one I'm hoping will stir some thoughts in your head, and, you know, just make you think differently about a job. And it's going to be very focused on meeting planners, but it doesn't mean that some of the things I'm talking about don't pertain to other people in the industry or even people outside the industry. So what I wanted to talk about is, why are you a meeting planner? And, you know, what do you get out of it? What drives you to do it? And so when I thought about when we go into this, if I talk to most people, including myself, there's the first layer. We love planning, and we love the logistics. We love binders, Kim and Tara and many of you. We love binders and spreadsheets. And for those of you who are in my CMP community, that's one of the questions. What could you not live without? And binders and spreadsheets are a big one.
List.
List
of lists,
yes. I mean, we just thrive on it. We love the details, we love everything, and we also love seeing the event come to life. And when I talk to people, and I even think back on my own experience, a lot of us started doing this not even as high school students, but as kids. We were the organizer, and something triggered that thought with me, because we're coming up to Earth Day, and it dawned on me, because I'm older than most of you, that the very first Earth Day was when I was in elementary school. And what I did, because I thought it was really important, was organize a group from our school to go clean the town forest for... would you let me finish my thought here, please, first? He's dying to say something.
No.
But, you know, I organized, and I know I did because I heard stories about it. I mean, it's not just my recollection that, oh, a teacher said, and no, I decided to do this. And luckily, some of my classmates and some parents, you know, backed me on this, and we organized a cleanup of the town forest, which... Don't ask me why, I was right next to the town dump. So you can imagine that there was a lot of trash in the town forest at the time. But the reason I bring that up is, you know, I, like so many of you, were the ones that brought people together, planned the local, you know, neighborhood carnival or lemonade stands or plays and performances. And then as we went through school and other extracurricular activities, we were the organizer, we were the convener, we were the ones putting on things like that. In your family, you know, you wanted to plan the birthday party, and so we like that, and we like seeing it come to life. So as we go through our career, now some people, you know, that's how they think about their career, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong about that, but it's kind of like the basics of where we are when we start, and it may be the way we choose to think about it the rest of our career. And again, not saying there's anything wrong about that. But I think then a lot of people move to what I decided to label the second layer. And I'm just making this up, you know, like I was trying to figure out how to organize the talk. So, or my thoughts, I should say, not the talk. But as time goes on, whether you consciously know these terms and use them, or you choose to go through your CMP or other education, Steve's staring at me because I'm knocking on the desk again, is you start thinking about creating the ROI for your client. You start thinking about, wow, what are the goals and the objectives and the strategy behind this event? This isn't just about pink napkins which would be pretty uncommon for corporate. But anyway, it's about why are we doing it? What's the end result we're looking for? The ROI for, the client, whether it's an internal or an external client. What's the strategy to get there? So that's a different way of thinking about it. It's beyond the list. It's beyond the binders. It's beyond, and again, even if you haven't, been involved in the classes and the reading and everything that talk about goals, objectives, and strategy, doesn't mean you're not already there. You just may not be thinking of them in that way. But at this point, you're really beginning to think about, how do I create a better event to actually, for the purpose of improving the organization that it's for. You could say it's a better event because you had a bigger budget, you got to add more bells and whistles, whatever it is, but really it's a better event when it improves the organization and meets the goals and objectives. Comments from you two on those two things I'm talking about?
Kelly?
Yeah, it definitely, it's definitely more than just like what it looks like on the outside. You really do have to pay attention to or put emphasis on making the event better for what you said. I forget exactly what it was, but making the event better for the organization. How is it going to make the organization better? Do you think a lot
of people think of meetings and events, and I address this to both of you and all of you listening, do you think most people think of it as that first level? Logistics and list and picking colors and, themes and, doing what's going to be a pretty or a nice or an expensive event. Do you think that's how, most people coming into this field probably see it? And I think that's probably true because really it's very hard to get exposed to it any other way except coming in on that layout bill. I was going to add something else to that. No clue.
I would say that's probably the way most attendees see it. They either say, oh, nice table settings, nice centerpieces. They don't think about. That's why I think it's always important for them to recognize the meeting planners at the event. Say, I've seen somewhere there's people that put it all together get recognized, as they should, because it's, as you say, it's more than getting a room and some coffee.
Yeah, and I think also the next step is when people actually start working with meeting and event planners and really begin to see how those details add up. We're not just being anal and obsessive about things because that's our personality. There's actually concrete reasons behind 25 different color-coded binders. And I think of you, Steve, when we planned that first IRS tax conference, the tax conference for nonprofits in
West Virginia.
In West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was obsessing. Well, I was quite emphatic. We were doing it on the college campus, and we were setting up, when I was giving my specs for the registration table, I was adamant that there be trash cans behind the table, beside the table, in front of the table, in the hallway leading down to the room. And he was just like, what is your thing about these trash? And they couldn't understand either, which makes me sad. But I'm sure some of you know it was a day meeting. So we had peel and stick name tags. And what happens with peel and stick name tags?
They just go everywhere.
Gosh.
The back, right? The stuff you peel off, they end up everywhere. They end up on the floor. They end up on the registration table because people just peel them off and leave it on the table. And, they drop them wherever they are. They'll lay them on a windowsill on the way to the room. So there is strategy behind why trash cans are so important at a registration table. But I remember he turned to me and said, I never would have thought of that.
Right. Or the other favorite one of mine that you showed me is, why do they have the utensils at the beginning of the buffet line? Because then you have to carry them in your plate and your cup and your everything else. Put them down at the end with the napkins.
Oh, yeah, I could do a whole spiel on the importance, in my opinion, of how a buffet line should be laid out. And yes, that's one of the key ones is put the silverware at the end of the table. And people go, well, then everyone asks where it is. Well, they should be able to see it, and you can tell them. I do admit they can be challenging if you decide to put it on the table. Then you have people wandering around looking for it. But beginning of the table, it just takes up more of your hands. It's hard. There's never enough room on a buffet table to really sit a plate down and take up food. And one of the other big ones on buffet tables that drives me up the wall is condiments before the food you're putting it on, because then people have to go past the condiments, get the food, then come back to the condiments. I know some of you are laughing or at least nodding your head. I know you are. So, but there's like real reasons. It's not my personal preference. It's just you want a buffet line to move effectively and efficiently. Figure it out,
I recall another time wherever we were, and you were doing the meeting, and I was presenting. We had asked for a separate room for dining, for lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And she came in and began to set up in the back of the meeting room. And the reason for that was we didn't want to have them eat at the tables where all their books and papers were, and it's always nice to have them go somewhere else so they can converse and network.
And not come back and sit at dirty tables.
And I didn't even notice her setting up back there, but I saw you in the back of the table. Get up and go over to her and
swoop on her, more likely. Swoop on this woman.
Say, hey, did they happen to mention to you that we have the room next door for lunch? And she said, no. So anyway, or even in West Virginia, when I let them go, 15 minutes early before lunch, and the doors were still locked, and she came back to me and said, don't ever let them go early for lunch. So
because, people don't understand that if it says doors open at 7 or whatever, it's because they need to be. They've timed the food that way. They may still be flipping a room, whatever. But, he thought he's doing this great thing like, oh, and you get to go to lunch early. And I'm like, so now they're all in the hallway complaining that they can't get into lunch.
Can't get the door open. Yeah.
Yeah. What's wrong? The door's locked. That's right, because it doesn't open until noon,
Going back to the beginning of why people are meeting planners besides list and binders, I think another one is they like to take all the stuff that's left over from an event and put it in their basement.
He says this. He didn't know me when I was actively planning events, and I can attest that it wasn't in our basement, but it was in the attic. It was in the attic of the garage. It was in the garage. Yeah, well, a lot of us, especially I was an independent planner, and I did a lot with nonprofits and small groups, so reutilizing things was highly important and very useful. And this day of sustainability, same thing, thinking out, and I think sometimes I heard a great story. Many of you have probably heard the podcast with Kim Copperthwaite on it, who most people know is a close friend of mine. And she told me a story a couple of months ago about how they were in a hotel. They'd done a multi-day conference and everything. And at the end, they had these big balloon, not sculptures, but like the kind with weights that go to the table or the floor, big balloon arrangements. And there was a military veteran veterans group. I was trying to think of what it was, that was coming in after them. And she, all the balloons were fine. Everything was fine. But, that's not something you're going to take home with you. One, they won't last and everything. And, she didn't want to just pop them. I hate watching things be torn apart at the end of the event. And she asked if they would like them. And they were just ecstatic. They didn't have the money to do that kind of thing. So, when you can pass them on to someone else, it's really great, for sure. But, I'm not good at throwing away things that can be used again in events. I'm not. And it's probably a good thing I don't plan anymore, because I'm not sure we could share the space.
So if anybody needs 96 little candle holder things, let me know.
You don't understand the importance of votive holders.
Yeah.
Those are like gold in our industry. You never, ever, ever can have enough votive
We have
holders.
little skinny flower vases too.
No, I got rid of those.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, he doesn't understand. I mean, I used to have like 4 different kinds of vases, little fish bowls, little bud vases. You do because you just reuse them and it cuts cost. And, again, I did a lot of nonprofit work, so that was a lot of it. So, Kelly, let's go back to you. So,
Yes.
When you think about your experiences and things, and even back when we were in the BU class and everything, do you think that's kind of how people enter that very logistical, binder, color-coded list type world? Like, this is what an event is, and this is what we love about it. Do you think that's how most people initially see events, even from the planning side? Like, if you're going to go enter the industry?
I think so. I think they go into it like very organized, wanting to have a plan for it and not just going as they like make decisions. That so doesn't fly with with a meeting or event planner. No, nothing is left to chance. But do you understand, what do you think about moving? You've been hanging around with me now for over a year. You think that next way that people begin to think, or a lot of people begin to think, even if they're not really conscious of it, is the second thing I'm talking about, like creating value and why we're actually having the event. And, I always find it a shame that events aren't questioned enough. And I think this has happened so this is being recorded in, what month are we in? April of 2022. Just to put it in context for whenever you listen to it. But, the past 2 years of the pandemic have made people, look at meetings and events differently. And I think that will continue for a few years and really should continue always. Why are we having this event? What's the purpose? And I'm very fond of saying we always have is not an appropriate answer. Just because it's the annual meeting doesn't mean you should be having it. Or the same as it was last year and 10 years ago and 40 years ago and whatever. So, I think once you get past that initial stage of when the logistics and everything almost become totally ingrained in you, like you don't even think about them anymore, you just do them, then, that second phase of, well, wait a minute, we could do this better, or why are we doing it? Or, well, that's why we're doing it. I always find it a shame when planners aren't told these details. They can plan better meetings for anyone if they know what someone's really trying to accomplish other than have a meeting. So the next thing, and hopefully this is somehow coherent in making you think. And the third thing I started thinking about, and a lot of this has come out of things I've heard people say even pre-pandemic, and with the pandemic, and the Great Resignation and people going, yeah, I'm not sure I want my life to be like this anymore, where I'm working 12, 15-hour days the month and a half leading up to a meeting. Sorry. Remembered my water bottle today, though, an accomplishment. Is, thinking of career paths, because when you start and you love it, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to move up from a meeting coordinator to a junior meeting planner to a senior meeting planner to director of meetings or whatever. The titles are so all over the place. And that's why one thing I will say is don't get hung up on titles. Look at what the job responsibilities are, not what the title is. And I know some of you struggle with that because you think, excuse me, you can't take a job because the title is, quote, below what you have. But, if you're getting to plan bigger, better, more what you want to plan, the title doesn't matter because they're so inconsistent. And one of the first, I think, wake-up calls I had on this, and this was probably at least 5, 6, probably more years ago than that. I had someone in my CMP class, and this was in the days of face-to-face, and she had worked her way up to director of meetings in her organization, and she was, she worked really, really hard to get it, but she was sharing with us that weekend that she was questioning it
because she wanted to be director of meetings because she loves meetings. Except as director of meetings, she didn't get to plan any. So that's the kind of thing I want you thinking as you're looking at your career path, is don't assume the title or the job is going to allow you to do what you want to do. And eventually she, not that long after that conversation with the class, she made the decision to step out of the director of meetings position and go back to being whatever, senior meeting planner or whatever, because she never got to actually plan meetings. She got to Band-Aid stuff. She was really serving as a personnel director for the meeting department. You know, she was having to handle all the human resource stuff, the conflicts, the job performances, but she didn't get to plan meetings. She said, I went into this field because I love to plan meetings. I'm not planning meetings. So, you know, that's the kind of thing I think everyone needs to think about when they're looking at job changes. Are you going to get to do more of what you want to do, less of what you want to do, the same? Title and money, and I realize money can be a driving thing, and I get that, but don't walk into jobs that you're going to discover isn't you. Thoughts on that, you two?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth it to go with what you like than having a better title. Like and I do think it's a lot of things people don't think about too. They're like, oh, I'm excited to move up and have that next position. But then it's a lot of times it probably is something that's a lot different than what you enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree. It is something I probably haven't really thought about either.
And again, I don't think I thought of it ever until she said that, because having not worked in a corporation or a large organization as a meeting planner, it didn't dawn on me that the director of meetings wouldn't be planning any meetings. Now, in some organizations, they do. They may have one key meeting. They may have a couple of key meetings. But again, do you want to do a couple of key meetings and be hurting and everything the rest of the department? You know, I kind of always tell people, you know, when we're working on career paths and things like that, I'm like, my goal is that we all end up doing at least 75% of our job is something we like to do. And that helps you balance out the other 25% that maybe you're on. But, you know, go for what you love, not the title, not the prestige, not the, you know, whatever, because that'll make a real long day at work. You may have a great title and a great paycheck, but if you don't actually like what you do, and I think this past 2 years, a lot of people have really thought about that.
True.
Okay, hashtag truth, right? Anyway, but I think also there comes a point, well, it may not dawn on you to think about this, you know, as you start your career path. You know, I think back to, Steve will assure you many years ago, what he doesn't tell you is he's 10 years older than me. But anyway, is that, you know, the topic, what I'm bringing up is your values and your ethics. When you start out, it honestly doesn't dawn on you, because it doesn't dawn on you that the world is going to ask you to do things that conflict with your values and ethics. And you may not even know what part of your values and ethics are on things, because you don't know those situations actually can occur. I would definitely put myself in that, you know, many times in my career. Like, you know, things would happen, horrible things where people pulled the rug out from under me, or I was being asked to do something that I didn't agree with. And I'd think, I can't even get my head around this, because it never dawned on me that someone would ask me to do something like that is borderline or blatantly, in my mind, unethical. And I hope to do a podcast sometime in the next couple of months on ethics in our industry. That's been bopping around in my head for a while. Not that I have all the answers, but I definitely don't. But it's more to get you thinking about them. But, you know, looking at both what you do maybe very specifically in your job, or, you know, when people ask you to hide things, or that's, you know, they always say about ethics, if you have to ask if it's ethical, it's probably not. And that has stuck in my head for years and years and years. But, you know, it's not just your immediate job, but again, going back to looking at what your meetings and events do. Are you, with your meetings and our events, are you creating positive change in the world? And that's very hard to see sometimes, because you may be creating positive change within your organization. That's great for your organization. But how do you feel maybe overall about, when you look at the bigger picture, the meetings and events, what are they doing to create change in the world? And sometimes it's not what it would appear at first. I don't know. Thoughts on either of those so far? Nothing?
No.
So, well, I've talked to enough meeting planners who have worked for companies, and it's not fair probably for me to say this, but most of the ones I run into these stories are for-profit companies. I won't say that there aren't nonprofits that maybe do some questionable things too, but focusing on the for-profit companies where planners have said to me, I can't believe in what we are planning the meetings for anymore. I can't believe in it. I can no longer agree with some of the things our organization is doing, and these meetings are supporting it. And first of all, let me make it clear, I'm not talking about incentive meetings. I am not in the group. I have watched this go through, the now and, 10, 15 years ago when we went through the recession, the boondoggles and the this and Muffin Gate and how can all this meeting be spent on blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people don't understand that incentives really drive a lot of business. And if someone works hard and they've been given goals and they meet them, they should get their incentive trip. And I totally agree with that. But I'm talking about the non-incentive ones. And of course, this is part of how the pharma guidelines came to be. And Sarbanes-Oxley came to be, is to draw parameters and have people look more carefully at what for-profit organizations were spending money on. And in this particular case, talking specifically meetings and events. But like those guidelines and SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, include more than meetings and events, but it did hit the industry pretty hard in terms of what meeting planners were doing. But it was calling out the ethics of how can you spend this much money on an educational meeting that has all these added bonuses and going to them. And so I find planners struggling with that. Like, we're making a product or service that's supposed to bring all this benefit to the world, but the way we're doing it may be questionable. And I've seen people leave because of that the values no longer line up with theirs, that they question the ethical practices of some of it, maybe some of the things that go on at a meeting. I can't remember if we talked about this one before, but I won't bring it up now. But anyway, thinking really, what are you doing? Are you making a change in the world? And I have to say, one of my best eye-openers was probably, has to be at least 15 years ago. And I was doing some in-house education for decent large meeting planning department at a medical education company. And this was a medical education company, how I think of the initial medical education companies that do a lot of the breakfast, lunch, and dinner meetings. These planners are planning sometimes 300 events a year, and they get dismissed a lot of the time as not being real meeting planners, or those aren't real meetings. You do 300 of them and you tell me if you learned something or not. And I didn't even know this existed until I got in there. And luckily I had put in my contract to go in for a day and shadow people, because I would have been so off base in terms of what I was teaching and talking about. But honestly, at the end of my first day, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I would hate this work. I would absolutely hate it. It's literally finding the best restaurant or whatever to have this dinner meeting, and the right doctor or presenter comes in, and all the doctors in the area come to it and everything to learn about the new drug or the new procedure or the new whatever it is. Well, I began to understand the importance that this is how they got like real FaceTime with people to do that and everything. And, but I was kind of like, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And then I got a good slap up the side of my head from a young woman who worked there, who I would guess probably was about 22, maybe. And it was definitely her first job. And she knew she wanted to be a meeting planner. And she was planning, like I said, a lot of these people plan 300 a year. And, she's walking me through her day and her area and the challenges she runs into and things like that. And I finally said to her, why do you do this? Because by the end of the day, I was like, I so would not want to do this. And she turned to me and she looked me straight in the eyes and she said, because I like to think that there will be at least one doctor who comes to my dinner meeting and learns about this new drug and what it can do, and he or she takes it back and saves or changes someone's life. And I remember, I still have goosebumps. And like I said, this was at least 15 years ago, because I thought, well, let's see who's more enlightened here now, right? And it was just like I had never, I couldn't even view it as that. I was viewing it in that first level of logistics, and this would be a real pain, and just like, blah, none of the fun stuff of meetings and everything. And her statement to this day makes me think, do our meetings go out and do good in the world? Do the people who attend our meetings go out and create positive change in the world? And again, that was she was at a for-profit med ed company. Obviously, all the clients were for-profit pharmaceutical companies. And, it was just like so eye-opening for me. And I'm just thinking, have you ever thought about yours that way? Kelly and Steve, jump in with some thoughts.
I have a thought, and I could see where this would apply in the past, like to a meeting planner, maybe for a tobacco company. Mm-hmm. Or maybe somebody realizes all of a sudden who's working for a beverage company, an alcoholic beverage company. And it'll probably happen, I'm predicting. Right now, I know cannabis is becoming legalized across the United States, and as we've seen businesses mature, somebody's always looking to be national, that there will be a national MIC cannabis company, and there will probably be meeting planner.
Oh, there's already meeting planners, I'm sure, at some of the companies.
Yeah, they're usually, I think right now, small, or at least local or regional. But eventually, as we've seen on that show we watch all the time, everybody wants to go national. So, yeah, I could see where that might, with your values, and whether or not you're doing good for the world or not.
Thoughts, Kelly?
I think that also it really does, like, determine, well, like, I guess how you plan events. Like, they'll, like, what am I trying to say? Like, if you really love working for, like, planning the events that you really do believe make a change, like a positive change in the world, I feel like that will just make, like, you love your job even more, and it'll help you get through, like, the tough times, and it'll make, like, it kind of just, like, separates someone who, like, likes their job because they like planning and who really, like, loves their job.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, because if they like it, they may be kind of stuck on that logistics level. But if they believe in the value to the world, not just their organization, but the value to the world, especially everything we're in right now, from, worrying about what's happening to the environment, to war, to, pandemics, to unemployment, or is this meeting actually creating setting the foundation or moving along positive change to address this?
I would go back to what you said about chasing titles, really. And that connects back to, because you help people with their resumes. And I think, like you say, if you could have an entry-level meeting planner who's planning international, with the title of entry-level, planning international meetings. And if you demonstrate that rather than the title on the resume, you show them what you do.
Well, and another good example of that is, and we're leading up to Administrative Professionals Day, formerly called Secretary's Day, because I'm old enough to remember that. But honestly, when Secretary's Day became a thing, he's trying to snark on my age again, is that, you know, it was the first time secretaries really got recognized. It is a big deal. And of course, the name has changed from secretaries to administrative professionals. But, you know, you may or may not see this thing I made for social media for Administrative Professionals Day, but I talk about the fact that maybe about 15 years ago, I was serving on a panel somewhere, and there was a planner beside me, and I we introduced ourselves, and she said, "Oh, well, I'm not really a meeting planner." I said, "Really? What do you do?" Well, she was the executive administrative professional for the CEO of a well-known pharmaceutical company. And she planned, part of her job was planning all the C-level things, everything for the CEO, et cetera. I mean, these are like the types of meetings that many meeting planners dream to do. She goes, "Yeah, but I'm not a real meeting planner." So, you know, again, going by the title, it's, you know, it can be very misleading. You have to look at what every job does, what the responsibilities are, not what the title is. She obviously was a very, very good meeting planner, but she didn't even believe it, because unfortunately people in our industry are very quick to say, "Oh, well, you know, anyone who's not a full-time meeting planner," and a lot of meeting planners have other responsibilities, no matter what their title is, you know, they don't count. They're not a real one. And a couple of years ago, there was a very ugly thing that happened in the industry about it. And I was just so embarrassed that anyone in our industry would be so patronizing and rude and things like that. But you have to look at what you're doing. And we also have to remember that most probably of the original meeting planners were secretaries. It was their other duties as assigned. And Kelly, when Christina was on about her book and talking about it, as I remember, her book starts with that, where she's talking about her aunt or her, I think it's her aunt or her grandmother. Who was a secretary in the 1960s, and her planning the events. And I mean, you have to know that. So, title does not determine what you do. I had someone recently who wanted to work in a particular industry because she had some experience in the industry. And I said, "Well, go look at this." It was actually a corporate real estate firm. She goes, "Oh, well, their jobs are all meeting coordinators." And I said, "Well, I actually know someone who went to work for one recently. And yes, her title is meeting coordinator, but she's basically the equivalent of the senior meeting planner." Different industries called jobs different things. So don't get too hung up on it. What else were you going to say?
Well, since you brought up the age card, you had indicated you were there at the first Earth Day.
Yes, I was very young, but I was.
I'm sure Adam and Eve appreciated that.
Yeah. We're just going to ignore him. So, you know, when it goes back to the values and ethics, I guess, you know, one of the things I'm asking you is, can you stand behind what your meeting produces? Outside of your organization. Again, obviously your job is to produce the best meeting and event you can for your organization based on their goals, objectives, values, ethics, mission, vision, all their value statements, etc. But I also ask you, can you personally stand behind what your meeting produces and brings out into this world that, I mean, there's crises all the time. We just happen to be at the crux of some really big ones right now. So it's something to think about, because, you know, it is a way to make change in the world. It really is. Positive change.
Nothing happens until you have a meeting.
Right. Yes. Yes. And MPI kind of coined a phrase like that years ago. I think it was during the recession. Maybe they did that. Everything begins with a meeting. So those are my thoughts. I just want you to think, if you're doing this career path, these are some of the different ways. And if you are comfortable going to work and just thriving in the logistics, go for it. As long as you're doing a good job, that's great. But many of you are looking at this for a lifetime, and you wonder why you get frustrated sometimes. And I think these are some of the reasons. So as you put this whole career path together, I guess make sure you don't sell yourself out. And only you know what that means, because it is totally different for each and every person. And I'm not going to judge you on it. It's not my job to judge you. It's no one's job to judge you. But can you live with yourself? Are you producing what you want to into the world? I just think it's a really important thing to think about. What can I say? My mother wouldn't let me be a social worker. She was afraid I'd bring everyone and everything home. But it does tend to be what I think. And when I see people frustrated, these are the type of things that finally push their buttons. How they're being treated, how they're being expected, are they being treated fairly or justly? And, why are they doing it? And again, if the logistics are good for you, just stay with it. But if you find yourself struggling, those are some of the things you think. And I've known people who have walked away from some, quote, really good meeting planning jobs, title, salary, schedule, benefits, etc., because they could no longer be part of that organization, both maybe because of things that are going on in their immediate department, but also what the company is standing for out in the world. Anything else you guys want to add? I think I pontificated enough.
Pontificated. Mm-hmm. Nope.
You're good?
I'm pretty good. I'm hilarious.
Kelly?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think it's kind of like those hard questions you have to ask yourself when you're not feeling completely, just happy with your job. And I feel like those can be hard questions to ask, and some people just push them off to the side because of their title or maybe the money. But in the end, might not be worth it.
Right, or the prestige, mm-hmm. or the, I guess this is part of what the Great Resignation's about. What am I giving up to produce whatever, and how is it affecting my personal life and me? And those are questions we should be answering all the time. Usually we only answer them when things come crashing around us. So anyway, I'm hoping, again, I don't have all the answers. Trust me, if you'd seen my career path and some of the things I've struggled with over the years, about the best I have to offer is experience, which sometimes actually rolls into a little bit of expertise. But what I do like to do is get people thinking as to how they may make better choices for them, for their organization, for their meetings, et cetera, for the world. And I hope this made you start thinking, or added to thinking you were already doing, so you know that you weren't alone in questioning some of this.
I just wanted to remind everybody to go to Joanne CMP Community, because I've been posting out there. They all need to follow me because I'm hilarious. So there's some good posts out there.
And for those of you who may not be in the CMP community yet, we've moved it to a new platform on Mighty Network, and it's open to anyone who took a CMP class with me, whether it was one of my 3-day, or actually the original class, which was 10 weeks, 3 hours a day. It's open to, when it was 3 days, when it was 2 days, when it became virtual. But I also chose to open it up to people who took CMP classes with me other places, like MPI Global, which would be WEC, PEC, Meet Different, CMP at Sea, my friends in Thailand, my friends in Beijing, my friends in Los Cabos. All of that was through MPI, but also certain MPI chapters had hired me to teach in theirs. And so, yes, anyone who did a CMP preparation course with me, you are eligible to be part of this community, and we are trying to make it extremely useful and interesting. And the nice thing is when you go there, the whole feed is about this because we moved it to a different platform. It's not, it's just about this. And a lot of people are really beginning to, catch what you can do. And we think it will grow tremendously. And it will also be the first place that many things are posted as time goes on. And if you missed your invitation, we made a decision not to send invitations more than once. And also for those of you who are on the community, we also made the decision not to notify you every time there's a post, although I believe there's a way you can go in and say what post you want to be notified about. But I didn't want you to end up hating it because you were being bombarded like we frequently are with things like this. So you have a lot of control, but if you want to get the most out of it, you kind of need to make those decisions. And there's also an app which you can get by going to the website. Kelly, how do we decide this happens? There's an icon and you put in your phone number and it texts you the link to, yeah. And that app will take you directly only to our community. I seem to have been the last one to know there was an app. But yeah, what can I say?
I was the last. You told me about it.
Yeah, I told you about it. Actually, apparently a lot of us missed it at the beginning.
I'm always the last to know.
No. Marianne was the first one to tell us. But if you didn't get an invitation and you believe you are eligible for this and you want to be part of it, and we certainly hope you do, you can email Kelly at joannedennison.com and she'll get you all set up. If you're not on one of our class lists, we'll just ask you a couple questions. Because people are just beating down the door to be in this thing. But actually, we have had some people ask to be in it who did not qualify. But we'd love to have you there. This will be where we start talking about like the meet and retreats, which will be in-person events. I'm aiming for 2023. I'm not going to play this game all 2022. Are we on? Are we off? So 2023, I'm hoping to get some programs back on cruises, things like that. So plus a lot of information you can get from people, and you all know that they sat in some class of mine, so they're kind of speaking the same language. And everybody needs to read that e-guide. Right. Well, they might want to. They don't have to. But everybody wants to. Oh, okay. It has a high read rate. Yes, it does. Actually. Very high, like double the industry average or more. And there'll be one, sometime soon, right? Yep. Yeah. Sometime soon. But we don't know when they're listening to this, but. Well, yeah. Whenever you're listening, read the e-guide. And hey, if you don't know what that is, you can text MeetGuide, M-E-E-T, guide, all one word, to 22828. He's the only one who remembers the text number. I know it has 2s and 8s. Anything else you want to say, Miss Kelly? You can listen to the podcast now on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music. Sorry, I hope you can't hear my dog barking. We can, but it's okay. Let me see, Google Podcasts. It'll be listed in the description below. So we have many options where you can listen to it on your phone, on your computer, wherever you are. So you have a dog in Florida and a dog in Boston? Yeah, she is a giant Doberman. She's very sweet though. Okay. She just doesn't like whenever like a UPS man or woman or FedEx people come to the door. Like most dogs, either that or they love them because they have been trained that they will always bring them biscuits. Mm-hmm. Right. So anyway, we'll let you go here. Hope this got you thinking about things. Love to hear feedback back. For those of you who are in the community, again, we're starting to post upcoming topics, asking you questions like, okay, if we're going to talk about speakers and working with speakers, what questions do you want to make sure we answer? And so be looking for those. And we're also going to be posting pretty soon ways that you can end up being a guest on these too. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. So, because that way you get to listen to someone other than Steve and I and Kelly, and especially when we don't have a guest. So thanks so much. Really appreciate you listening. Hope this somehow helps you as you go forward into your day or week. And thanks again. Really appreciate it.